Hey, welcome to Seed Coffee Company. Tonight we had our first book study on When Helping Hurts, how to alleviate poverty without hurting the poor and yourself. Tonight we started with the question, what is poverty? So often when we think of that question, we go to a lack of material things, money, education, housing, healthcare, whatever it might be. We start with this assumption that poverty is simply a lack of things. So when we think about poverty as lack of things, one of the issues that comes about is that we treat people as projects. We're asking them the question, what's wrong with you, instead of what's strong with you. We're saying, what don't you have, rather than looking at what do you have? What are your gifts? What are your skills? What are your assets? And how can we use those to improve your own relationship with God, with self, with others, and with the rest of the creation? This idea that you are created for fruitful work, that you are meant to use your hands, your gifts, and your skills, not only to better yourself, but to better community. When we held the book study tonight, we did a case study on a recent refugee family. And we are looking at their own journey in experiencing poverty, of not just being about not having money or proper clothing or access to health care, but thinking through the things that you might not think to see. The ways in which their relationships are broken, their relationships with other people. So looking at how a loan shark might take advantage of them and oppress them and have high interest rates for payments on a car. Or thinking through an employer who might be taking advantage of the head of the household but not paying him on time. Thinking through the ways in which the children are bullied at school because of the way they speak or the clothes that they wear. But also thinking through the brokenness within our own systems here in the U.S., of thinking through the difficulties that a refugee family might experience in communicating with schools, not having adequate access to translators. So thinking through these families that are coming here and trying to learn the systems of education, who might only have access to a translator once a week for 2 hours, and just thinking through the difficulties there. And the feelings of isolation, of powerlessness, of not having a voice, of feeling as if you don't have the opportunity to make change in your own world. And so really just thinking through what is poverty. For this family, poverty was a true lack of relationships, of broken systems that are contributing to their struggles. And so when we think about the definition for this family of what is poverty, we also ask the question, what does success look like for them? Success looks like finding your voice. It looks like finding adequate work where you're able to utilize your skill sets, where you feel that you have a sense of purpose and a contribution to society. Describe a feeling that you had during our group discussion tonight.
Honestly, I think at times I felt a little bit overwhelmed, and I think that's like common when you talk about poverty. It's a really complex thing. It's also important to wrestle with the complexities of anything, but especially with poverty. And so it's easy to feel overwhelmed, but at the same time, I feel hopeful. Like I feel hopeful that there's people in our community that like are wrestling with it, and I think through the wrestling, that's like the only way to get to a better place.
What did you think were some of the takeaways for the people that were involved in our conversation tonight? Like what were some of the things that you heard, or some things that maybe felt that you already knew but that people learned themselves?
The definition of poverty is not a bad definition, but I think it was really sweet for all of us to expand on what poverty looks like. And it's not just without money or without a home, but again, without friendships, without resources, education, and then each of us talking about ways how that implicates and hurts our identity when we're blocked off from certain things. I think gave everybody an opportunity to realize, oh, I actually have the capacity to give somebody that. Even if poverty doesn't look the way we may see it, each of us are without something. So how can we give back and realizing where our privileges are? I think that's great.
What's the one thing that you're going to take away from our book club tonight?
For me, I love constantly coming back to like how can others also serve me, because I think that's a really powerful way to learn and grow in mutuality with people. And so living in this space of like I want to serve others, but I also am like, I am someone who also needs to be served.
So when I think about our first book study, which was absolutely phenomenal, one of the things that I definitely want people to remember is that poverty is more than just a lack of material things. Poverty has to do with broken relationships, the broken relationship which we have with God, who is the creator and sustainer of all life, the relationship that we have with ourselves, knowing that we are made in his image with value and self-worth, the relationship that we have with others, and the relationships that we have with creation, the ways in which we steward our gifts, our time, and our resources. So that's one thing that I want people to remember. The second thing that I would love for people to remember is that before you can even engage with those who are materially poor, we first have to embrace our own brokenness. We can't go to another and ask them to take a diagnosis of their own life without first examining ourselves, knowing the ways in which our own poverty is contributing to their poverty. The third thing that I would want for people to take away from our study tonight is that you do have a responsibility to care for those within your community. That we need to wake up every single morning with this understanding that there are things that are wrong in the world and that we need to strive and yearn to make a change. Poverty is the result of relationships that do not work, that are not just, that are not for life, that are not harmonious or enjoyable. Poverty is the absence of shalom in all its meanings. When I think about poverty alleviation, what does it mean to have success in this work? It means to fight for things that are for life, to fight for things that are just, and to reconcile relationships with God, self, others, and creation.